Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're going to continue our discussion with Amber and Legolas on the collected Canter. Now we're picking it up here today. He's already done a long, extensive walk, stretch work, and come up into a frame in the walk. And now we're just beginning the trot work. He's already done one stretch before this, so we're going to pick it up on the second stretch in the second direction as he begins to loosen up and take it forward from there. So once again, we see he now has a nice, clear stretch. This was very difficult for this horse as to his size. We had to start him stretching in a very big arena because he just literally could not stretch on a 20-meter circle due to his size. But now he can, and it's all working very, very well and starting to work up into collection. So notice as she begins to sit to the trot and shorten her reins there a little bit, how nicely the horse comes up underneath her. Now we're not going to work him in the biggest collected trot that we can get yet today because our goal is to work on the collected canter today. So I'm only going to ask him to get 80% of the way there of what's possible in the trot. So I save some energy for the work in the canter. But you can see he's clearly working over his back here quite nicely, beginning to lift the forehand off the ground. Always remember, once again, is that ability of the horse's hind legs to thrust up into the round back that lifts the forehand off of the ground, so to speak, and keeps it elevated, as you can see him beginning to do here. Look how uphill this horse is now starting to look all the time. Now, it's necessary for that to happen for a horse even to track up into the front foot, which is why, of course, when we see these hollow horses, they're throwing their front legs out, but back legs aren't coming through, which, of course, does a great deal of damage to the horse's legs and tendons. Notice how nicely straight he's going, nice swinging tail, no resistance. Look how nicely back the ears are listening to the rider. It's completely relaxed in this work. So again, also look how perfectly he is flexed at the pole. Remember, this was a horse who had been broken in the third vertebrae, so it took us a couple of years to completely heal that. But look how good it is now. You wouldn't even know that it had happened. Just a little loss of rhythm on these changes of bends at this point, but not bad whatsoever, staying over his back really well. And once again, we're not going to ask for the biggest collection we can get here today in the trot work. We're saving that for the canter work. So this is all still basically a warm-up to work into the canter. Nicely straight down the long side. And notice how quiet Amber's legs are becoming. Now once again, this horse is almost too big for Amber to ride. But her legs are finally starting to quiet down. Numerous people had commented before about how much her legs were moving at first, because this is a very big horse and her legs come to a not below the break of the side of the horse as well as I'd like. But she's done a great job of getting them under control. Look how nicely it comes through in that medium trot there. Notice that the back legs swing through on the same degree as the front legs. The cardinal rule of correct dressage. How nicely he balances himself back underneath himself now again. So again, now we're at a point with him where she can just stretch up and just restrain her back a little bit, and we feel the horse gather up underneath her, and that's exactly what real collection feels like. Think of it as a wave that we begin to feel that wave build up by just restraining ever so slightly. The wave, like a wave of water running towards the shore, begins to build up into a crest. But with a horse, it's like once we get the horse back up, we can get that feeling of surfing, so to speak, that power coming through the wave of the horse's back. Pretty good medium trot there again. It was just a little bit bent to the inside, a little too much for that, but not badly. But look how light on his feet he's starting to look here. You can clearly see how he's elevating the forehand. Now notice that we have not elevated his neck at all, we've just lowered the hindquarters. So his neck is not in an exaggeratedly high position, it's in the position necessary for him at his level of work. So we do a little bit of that work and then we come back into the stretch again. Once again, letting him stretch out long, letting the blood flow back into the muscles, which is why that's so important. If we keep a muscle tight all the time, it's never going to grow. If it's going to grow in the wrong way because we don't bring the blood flow back to the muscle by relaxing. If you ever watch weightlifters, for instance, they relax between each set that they do to give their muscles time to recuperate. So a muscle that's taut all the time is never getting that recuperation moment that it needs. Now notice after coming into the trot here how we get a little more thrust off the ground now in the trot. He's showing a little more level of collection there. He's beginning to lower a little bit more in the hindquarters. Really nicely done there. Now you notice that she is riding with two whips. So that's something that we do once in a while. It's very especially helpful for Amber, once again, as her legs are just barely long enough to get down the side of this horse. So having a whip that she can just get under him a little more helps him get up and through a little more. Again, another good just medium trot coming through. Got a little unbalanced in that one, struggled a little bit, but clearly came through from behind. Came nicely back into balance afterwards. Really nice here. Now showing a little bit more collection. Notice as the pole comes up a little higher, and now we see a little more thrust. Notice that the horse seems to be floating off the ground a little more. That's what real collection is. The hindquarters lower, and they thrust off the ground, and that's what pushes the front end up into the air. And once again, that's what enables the back end to come through. Hollow horses will always want to forge if we start doing extended trot, so they brace the neck back, and that way the horse only throws out the front legs and doesn't forge behind. But if your horse does forge, it tells you that the horse's back is weak and not really strong enough. Look how nicely he came back into there. Now watch this rein back. This is only the third time he's ever done that. So this shows me that the impulsion is starting to complete itself. Notice she didn't have to bring the horse back by her hands at all. She simply closed her legs and let her upper body come a little forward, opening the door in the back, and that let the horse flow right through. Exactly how the horse should work in the rein back. Remember, the rein back is a 2-beat gait, not a 4-beat gait. So when you see horses pulled back by their hands, they'll always break the diagonal pairs. And now he's a little more collected here in the trot. Once again, look how much the forehand is elevating. It's not how high the horse moves its knees, it's how much the horse thrusts the forehand up into the air. That's what real collection is, not knee action. Very nice downwards transition to that walk, so we'll give him a little break here. That was a good warm-up. Now, once again, on the days that I'm going to work on the canter on this horse, which we've been doing more of. Remember, we really only started to canter this horse in earnest in the last year, and even then, it probably has only been 20 times or something that we've cantered him. Now his canter is getting to the point where it's balanced enough that we'll be able to start working more of it. Always remember, doing more canter on a horse with a bad canter will never improve the canter. It will just end up giving you the horse a sore back and maybe ending up with you on the ground. So if your horse has a bad canter, you simply wait and give it time. Keep coming back to the canter, keep getting the horse over its back in the walk and trot, and then come back and simply try the canter. And one day the horse will simply be able to canter. Always remembering that you can't fight a horse into doing anything that's worth doing. If you're fighting with your hands with a horse, you're going to end up with a badly trained horse and probably a lame one as well. So after all that work, we want to come back after that trot work. Now we're going to prepare. Now we're just beginning to work these transitions from the ground. We've done them a few times before, maybe 3 times with him from the canter. So now we'll begin to ask for these transitions, skipping a gait, that is from the walk to the canter, which is much more complicated for the horse. But you can see how clearly he comes into a nice balanced walk here. Wanted to lift up there just a little too soon. Remember, he always had this problem of wanting to throw his head, but really hardly moves it at all, and right there comes back into a very nice canter. And look how seated this canter is, and slow now. This was a horse when we first began cantering him. The dressage ring was simply too small to do it in. Really nice. Look how he keeps that position of the pole, softening at the actual pole, not in the third vertebrae. And look how the canter stays uphill. Look how deep the horse gets under himself. So once again, you can see how the wave, before it breaks down, is already completing itself. Now we're going to ask for a downwards transition and into an extended trot. So we've only done this maybe once or twice before, but the canter was so good, makes a nice transition, gets himself back into the balance. A little bit of struggle there, but then he's able to come right through in this extended trot. And look how deep the hind leg steps under the body after that. Once again, notice the hind leg is swinging through to the same degree as the front leg, so that was really good. Now he could have stayed up a little bit more, and as time goes on, we'll ask him to maintain a little more collected work, that is, that medium trot. He won't let himself down so much in the front. There's still a little bit more of a lengthening of stride when the horse does that. So when the horse can keep the balance up the hill and still come through behind, then we have a medium trot and a collected trot and an extended trot. But we were very happy with that for today with him. Once again, you can see how nice his balance became there in the canter, how uphill it stayed throughout. And we have begun working him on flying changes. Just every now and then. We've done it, maybe 10 times over the course of the 3 years that he's been here, but that's coming together really nicely. He wants to get a little big in the canter, so that's why we're now working on solidifying the collected canter. And then once again, once I really have the collected canter there, then I'll go back to working the flying changes again, but not until. Always a good idea when we're working on the hardest thing the horse does, before changing direction, just come back and let the horse walk out again. Reestablish that forward swing. And of course, reestablishing the horse's willingness to do the work that we're asking it to do. A really good walk here, stretching all the way down. This was a horse that was quite fractious when he was young. And if you started the canter, he literally would just bolt. That's all he knew about the canter. So really had to stay away from that for a while. But you can see now how he's really coming underneath himself. Even those transitions are coming beautiful from the walk into the canter. It won't be long before those will be nearly perfect. But once again, not because we did it so many times, but we simply waited until the horse was ready to do the work at that level. That's the biggest thing I see holding people back, is they're trying to do things that are impossible for the horse, and then they get in the fight with the horse, and then they lose the horse's willingness. So here she just brings them up as she prepares to go into the canter again from the walk. And very nicely, just a little bit above the bridle there, more so than I would like him to do, but this is something that we're compromising our way through, so to speak. When we first started him, every time you'd ask him to canter, he felt like he had to throw his head straight up in the air. So that's just basically disappearing very slowly, and look how nicely he's getting over his back again and staying uphill in the canter. Doesn't look like a rocking horse. It looks like a wave that just keeps repeating itself rather than the two ends going up and down, which is not what we want a horse to feel like. So he's able to keep that balance, keep his straightness on the long side, very nicely consistent. Look how deep and up that canter is. You can see it uphill going down the long side there. See how the withers kept the same position. And now we're going to do the same exercise. Has a little difficulty there in that downwards transition. Those are just coming, but I'm not going to over-school that. And once again, we come back to an extended trot, letting him swing through here. Now, once again, this is more of a lengthening of stride as I let the horse come a little bit longer in the frame because he just wasn't quite ready to hold it all the way up there after that. But that was really good and exactly what we're looking for. So that was exactly what I wanted the canter to be. So once again, now we had warmed this horse up for probably a good 20 minutes before this tape began. So then we just did some sort of immediate difficult work in the trot, just to get him ready to come back. And once again, if you look at how that rein back worked today, look how nicely, if you go back and look at that again, how she just simply halts, she keeps her hands closed on the reins, and all she does is let her upper body come forward. There's no backwards tension in the rein, and he flows back from her legs in a nice 2-beat walk. Now, when you can get that, generally is about the time you're going to get a good strike off in the transition from the canter. That is, from the walk to the canter. Nicely comes back. Last few moments we spend just in a little more collected trot here. Notice the forehand's a little more elevated. We get a little more lift right here. And then we're going to finish the work. And that's exactly how we want it to work. The hardest thing only takes a few minutes of the workout every day. Work towards that. Will Faerber from Art to Ride.